Back in the forest, in my usual spot. Kitty boy came with me. He's very chatty right now. And so are the birds. It's very sweet. It's a lot warmer here in Northern California than I've ever experienced this time of year. And I'm just enjoying the sun every day and watching the light grow closer to the northern hemisphere and increasing in light. And that's a beautiful thing to watch the sun and the moon. And I've been thinking a lot about information and history, and there's and stories we tell ourselves, stories that have been told to us about our history. And it's really interesting time to be alive, because through, I don't know, my lifetime, I've experienced, and my story is what I wanted to share today, is where I came from and where I am now is so different. And part of it's because of just living here, of course, and wondering, what is this about? And just questioning reality. And I just came into the world with a lot of questions. Oh, that sounds like an owl. I don't know if you can hear it, but yeah, what, what's going on? And recently I shared some information about petrified wood with a friend of mine, and that there was this whole other way of seeing based on people who have also been questioning reality and started to see things in this reality and being able to shift away from the common narrative about geology and really see things in a different way. And then once you see it, you can learn from their channels because they've done so much research. But I sent a friend, one of these videos, and he really reacted strongly against this geology model that we've been given. And to me, I'm like, it's a way of shifting perspective. When you shift your perspective, you're able to see things from different angles. And it's all about angles of light here. And there's certain things to the physics of this reality that relates to this, as in everything is reflecting. So there's a reflective quality to this reality. And it's interesting because in old books, they talk a lot about mirrors and how mirrors were used for magic. And there's this whole thing with the scrying mirror and the obsidian mirror. And some say our phones are like scrying mirrors now, that we are manifesting through these reflective devices. So there's always this reflection. And why it's reflective, a big part of that is how the mind is creating our reality in every moment. So this isn't to say people born into really hard situations have created that for themselves. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it becomes a basis, and then we stay locked in a reflection of that, because that's what we're seeing, that's what we're experiencing, that's our reality. So, and then it becomes the hero's journey to transform out of it. And I do believe that we can all change our reality if we really work at it. But, some people are coming into really hard situations, and I know that. And I'm not trying to say, oh, you created your reality, that's why you're doing, that's why you're suffering. That's not exactly what I'm saying. But being able to understand the nature of reality, which is its reflection and it's reflective, and part of that is the brain. The brain is reflecting. Our thoughts are reflecting what we're seeing, and we're creating through that. So that's a big aspect. The other aspect is, and I've noticed through all these different channels and people doing their own boots on the ground work and looking at Google Earth and all kinds of things. This is an age of information, so there is a lot of information, and that's on all levels, really, that people have been questioning, and that whatever you go looking for, you will find. So that's insane to me. Like, people go looking for petrified hearts and geology, biology, geology, where it's like, oh, this could have been. And then there's this whole thing about petrification that could have happened instantly, not over millions of years. Not to say that things didn't petrify over millions of years, but that there's all this evidence of soft tissue being petrified, and fish caught in the act of, copulating in a stone. So it's like, well, an octopus, in stone, and all these. So there's all this things that counter that long-term unitarian model that is given to us from institutions. So, not that people weren't aware that there could be this long-term evolution of the Earth, but there also is these evidence of this very quick kind of Earth shifts and changes. Not that they were affecting everyone, because there's a lot around the turn of the century, that my great-grandmother was alive during that time, and I have her life story she wrote, and she never mentioned it. So I'm like, well, that would have been a huge thing. There was a total reset, but maybe her reality in the country of Ohio didn't reflect the cities of San Francisco burning down, or Chicago, or all these big city resets. So, yeah, whatever you go looking for, you will find. That's amazing. So, and that is something to explore, because we're all being given different little clues and hints of information. And my story, really, 9/11 was kind of the first time I ever was like, what is going on? And then, and I just have a huge bullshit meter, so I was just like, this is weird. I don't understand this. And it didn't, my mind could not take that information from this is when you had televisions too, and watched channels and news and things long ago. Way long ago. It wasn't that long ago, but it feels like a long time ago in the technological sense. And then 2020 happened, and it was like, oh, what? Everyone's just like going on board. And then I was like, always a left-leaning person, and also very political, and grew up in Berkeley in the 80s, and really knew all the civil rights people that still were around, and knew all the stories and all the the protests against the governments. And we all understood this, that the governments were corrupt and they were doing all kinds of things. And then over time, things get forgotten and things get changed. So there is a whole thing with Mandela effects here, where something where you thought, like, the thinker, is like this or like this. I don't know. There's people that insist that it was a certain way, and I personally have never seen it, so I don't know. But there's all these changes that happen, like edits to this reality. So there's an interesting, like, an interesting way of understanding and perceiving. And perception gets into everything. And this is where, like, the more mystical aspects of this reality come from. It's like, if you are only perceiving physical reality, you're missing out on all these other levels. Now, if you've experienced psychedelics, you will understand that there is a whole other levels going on. But you may not think, oh, well, they're only going on when I'm on this uh, type of psychedelic. And really, it's happening all the time. You're just able to see it during this time of the left brain shutting down or whatever is happening with psychedelics when you're doing them. So it's, all this stuff is happening. All this energy is here. And we don't learn about energy. We don't learn about our chakras. We don't learn about, at least I didn't growing up. So when you start to look at physics of this reality and challenge mainstream physics that tries to deny, well, science denies the ether. Well, why does science deny the ether? It's because they don't want to know, they don't want to acknowledge that we're all connected by this kind of watery energy that actually transmits things way faster than a telephone or a cell phone. It's, thoughts, boom, they're out there, they're already transmitting. So, and this gets into the mind and understanding the mind, which I really been exploring a lot too. And just how we think, how we perceive. And then if you get to this point where you can shift and just be curious, and this is what I told my friend, I was like, well, it may sound ridiculous, but these guys have stories that brought them to this place, and then tons of evidence to reflect that. And, of course, they're thinking different about geology because they've had these experiences and these stories, where something was saying, hey, that doesn't seem right. What else is going on? And also, I was telling him that it's not about right or wrong. I'm not denying that this long-term geology, could be true. It could be true millions of years, the whole thing, the dinosaurs, all that stuff. But also, this thing is true, that this and that is true. That it's not this or that multiple things can be true at the same time. And I think this is really important when we're looking at history and our own histories even, and there's a way that we want to just deny this and be this or that, because that's very in line with also this reality, which is masculine, feminine, which is polarized, the electricity, the magnetism, everything is like the friction that's created is what's making things move. So, when you get into history and politics and things like that, it's like they need us, whoever the controllers are, need us to be in friction with each other. And that gives the whole thing energy. So it's really super interesting when you get into studying magnets, electricity and magnetism, the torus field. All these things are like sacred geometry, astrotheology. All this stuff is like really mind expanding. And I always recommend, like, people that I'm working with this stuff is, look at Carlos Castaneda, listen to his books and listen to what he's saying, because he's talking about being able to shift perspective. And when you shift your perspective, you can actually perceive more and perceive different layers of reality. So these are just some of my thoughts. I'm always thinking about stuff and exploring. So notice when you get triggered, like, why am I being triggered by the things? What is that about? And see if you can just observe something. I'm going to put some channels connected to this and see if people want to explore. I also have a playlist called Be Curious that has a lot of different stuff in it that you can explore if you're curious. And I appreciate those who are watching and paying attention to what I'm saying. I appreciate you for observing and being the observer. I don't need people to follow me and like this. I need to get this just out of my head because it's important, and it's actually brought me so much freedom and joy because I have seen the cycles of history and the possibilities. So, and I refuse now to take on the talking points and to perpetuate the dualistic nature of our history and politics. I'm just done. And it just feels really good and free and liberating. Enjoy your day.